Good afternoon. Will the Committee on Planning, Infrastructure, and Transportation please come to order? It's Thursday, January 16, 2025 at 2:36 p.m. and I would like to welcome our Committee Vice Chair, Okimoto, and Committee Members Wire and Tupola. And Councilmember dos Santos-Tam, I believe, will be on his way. Pursuant to Section 92-3.7, the Hawaii Revised Statutes, this meeting will be conducted as a remote meeting by interactive conference technology with the following procedures in effect for the meeting. Members of the public will be allowed to provide oral testimony on all items on the agenda through two ways, remotely and in person in the council chamber. Remote and in-person oral testimony will be allowed when the agenda item is taken up. As both English and Hawaiian are official languages of the state of Hawaii, pursuant to the Article 15, Section 4 of the Hawaii State Constitution and Section 1-13 of the Hawaii Revised Statutes, members of the public may testify in either language. For oral testimonies offered in Olelo, Hawaii, additional time as may be necessary will be allowed for the testifier to provide an English translation of their testimony. Before testifying, each person shall state their name. Each speaker may not have anyone else read their statement and is limited to a 1-minute presentation on each item. All persons who have registered to testify remotely by video conference or phone will be called upon first. When your name is called, please monitor your screen and activate your audio feed when prompted. For those who are joining us by telephone only, I will identify you by the last 3 digits of your phone number. When your number is called, please press *6 to unmute yourself when prompted. I will then give persons who have not registered an opportunity to offer testimony. Please utilize the raise hand feature on Zoom to be called upon. Some friendly reminders and tips: please video conference from a quiet location if possible. And if you're also watching the proceedings on Olelo, please mute your television at the time you're called to testify. When the timer on screen reaches 0, please conclude your remarks promptly. Once all the remote testifiers have testified, I'll proceed to our in-person testimony in the council chamber. Persons who have not registered will be given an opportunity to speak following the oral testimonies of the registered speakers. HRS Section 92-3.7 requires all votes at remote meetings to be conducted by roll call unless unanimous. Therefore, I will first call for objections, and if there are any, I will call for a roll call vote. For those council members participating from outside of the council chamber, in accordance with HRS Section 92-3.7, the meeting will automatically recess if we lose audiovisual contact with you, and we will not be able to reconvene until we reestablish contact. Therefore, please announce beforehand if you'll be voluntarily signing out of the meeting. For written testimonies, written testimonies, including the testifier's address, email address, and a phone number, will be available to the public as described on the posted agenda. As a courtesy, please turn off all silence or turn off all cell phones. With that, members, with your indulgence, also before that, I would like to welcome to the Chamber Committee Member Dos Santos-Tam. With your indulgence, members, I do want to take up items 7 and 8 before we move on to agenda item number 1. So I would like to direct your attention to agenda item number 7, which is, where is it? I'm not used to this. Resolution 24-223. This resolution proposes an amendment to Chapter 21, Revised Ordinances of Honolulu 2021, the Land Use Ordinance relating to sign standards for businesses in apartment mixed-use districts. I will defer to the introducer of the resolution, our committee member, Tupola.
Thank you so much, Chair. Thank you very much for putting it in the front. And those who may be online, I do know we have a few here in person ready to testify. Both this bill and the next were brought up to me by people who in the mixed use area, which is not a lot of places. It's kind of a new concept in Honolulu where we have housing with commercial downstairs, that there is some prohibitions that limit them to the amount of signs that they have. And so we are proposing something that's very broad, doesn't touch a lot of language, that will allow, therefore, multiple businesses to have a sign up as opposed to only one in one building. So thank you so much, Chair.
Thank you very much, members. And I do want to give a reminder to those that when we are making amendments to the land use ordinance, as well as like a section like the next bill we're taking up, will be submitted as a resolution. Then, if approved, goes to the Department of Planning and Permitting for review, and then sent over back to us in bill form and suggestions. With that, I would like to call up to the city administration, and I believe we have Liz Kruger from DPP.
Good afternoon, Chair Cordero and committee members. I'm Elizabeth Krieger with the Department of Planning and Permitting. In response to this resolution, we've looked at it, and in general, I think that we support the idea of allowing businesses to have business signage within the apartment mixed-use district. We had responded when when the resolution was initially introduced, to say that we are looking at kind of a sign overhaul for the entire LUO. And so, of course, our preference would be able to do that all at once, but I understand that this is an important issue. And again, in general, we support the idea.
Thank you very much. Members, are there any questions for the city administration's representative? Okay, so Councilmember Wire.
Just quickly, and mahalo to Councilmember Tupola for introducing. I was just curious, I mean, we can still pass this out, right? And then you would do your evaluation for the sign overhaul, and could you put it together still and send this to the Planning Commission, or no, this would preclude that?
That's a good question. So when this resolution gets passed, it gets transmitted to us, and we have 270 days to respond with a draft bill through the Planning Commission. I was looking at exactly your question and noticing that because this resolution is relating to sign standards for businesses in apartment and apartment mixed-use districts, I'd have a question maybe for Office of Council Services about what would happen if we responded with, and here's Article 7 altogether, or if we would probably more likely do two, one being a response to this resolution, and then if we were ready at the same time, that we would transmit together to the Planning Commission two agenda items. One would be, this is the resolution, and then the other would be, and it's incorporated into this overall sign bill.
And then the Planning Commission could maybe just combine it into one, or they might still obligated to follow the initial
I think that
form.
they would send both forward.
Okay.
I think that, like if we recommended approval of the resolution, they would want to keep that going in case the sign overall plan changed or failed or whatever. Like that, it might be beneficial to keep the finite and the more holistic going at the same time.
Okay.
But again, I'd be asking Council Services exactly how the City Council's rules would work in that situation.
Okay, no, appreciate that, Ms. Krieger. And I'll defer to Chair, support the resolution, just wanted to clarify. Mahalo.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Wire. Members, any other questions? Councilmember Tupola.
Thank you, Chair. Aloha, Liz. Thank you for being here. Appreciate all your work. Always love working with you. I just wanted to make mention that yesterday our meeting went well with the director as well as with Core Council, and I do think if anyone else needs to know any legal details about why the overhaul is needed, that can be done at a separate time, either individually or in executive session. But I think overall my concern was I do want it to be a part of the overall overhaul of the signage. However, Hope Healy was built in, the first phase was done in 2018. So there have been quite a few businesses that have been waiting for maybe 7 years for something like this to benefit them. And at a time where many of them are struggling to be able to have business, I just wanted to make sure that if we could move this forward, if it didn't make any waves and was in line with what you guys are doing, that we could move it forward prior to that. And if it goes at the same time, great. So I know there's still a lot of processes before this gets done. So I think the resolution is a safe way to move. But thank you both to the Corp Council as well as the DPP for being willing to work with us on this. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, members. Any other questions before we move on to testimony? Okay, thank you very much. Next, we will now proceed with remote testimony. Clerks, do we have any remote testifiers?
Chair, there are none.
Okay, we will now proceed with in-person testimony. I would like to call up Lee Tokuhara.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Cordero, Vice Chair Okimoto, and members of the committee. I am Lee Tokuhara, representing D.R. Horton, Hawaii. I'm here to support Resolution 24223, Land Use Ordinance Amendment relating to administrative enforcement. I've submitted my written testimony, but can answer any questions that you may have.
Members, any questions for the testifier? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much for your testimony. Is there anyone else in person who wishes to testify? Please come up to the podium and state your name for the record. Seeing none, we will now close testimony. Members, we are back in discussion. Okay, seeing none. Members, as this is a part of a longer process, the chair would like to recommend that Resolution 24-223 be reported out for adoption. Any discussion? Any objections or reservations? Hearing none, so ordered. Moving forward, members, like I mentioned, but for the public, we are taking items 7 and 8 up first. We are now on agenda item number 8, Resolution 24-220, which proposes an amendment to Chapter 21, Revised Ordinances of Honolulu 2021, which is the subdivision ordinance relating to parks and playgrounds. I would like to defer once again to the introducer of the resolution, Councilmember Tupola.
Thank you so much, Chair. So this resolution, similarly, will have to go to the Planning Commission and come back to us. It is suggesting that part of our allowance for developers is to allow for a dog park in addition to a human park, because right now you only can have parks that are for humans as part of the park dedication required per the city. We have quite a few parks, but many of our community members would like to see dog parks. So we're suggesting that we allow for some of that. Thank you.
Thank you. It'd be really interesting to see how the dogs get to the dog park without a human. Thank you. Oh, and with us from the city administration, we have the Deputy Director, Brian Gallagher.
Good afternoon, Council. Brian Gallagher, Deputy Director, DPP. We've read through the latest resolution, and we're supportive in its format. We support this motion going forward. So yeah, anything we can do to help, we're here.
Thank you. Members, any questions for Deputy Director Gallagher? Seeing none? Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Moving forward, we will now proceed with remote testimony. Clerks, do we have any remote testifiers?
Chair, there are none.
Okay, and we will now move forward to in-person testimony. I would like to call up Lee Tokuhara again.
Good afternoon, Chair Cordero, Vice Chair Okimoto, and members of the committee. Again, Lee Tokuhara, representing D.R. Horton, Hawaii, here to support Resolution 24220, Subdivision Ordinance Amendment relating to parks and playgrounds. I've submitted my written testimony, but can answer any questions that you may have.
Members, any questions for the testifier? Okay, seeing none, thank you. Thank you very much. Is there anyone else in person who wishes to testify? Please come forward to the podium and state your name for the record. Okay, seeing none, members are back in discussion, or if you have any questions. Okay, all right. Thank you, Councilmember Breyer. Awesome. We will now then move forward to the recommendation. The chair then recommends that Resolution 24-220 be reported out for adoption. Any discussion? Any objections, reservations? Hearing none, so ordered. Okay, members, once again, for full transparency, we moved up agenda items number 7 and 8 before items number 1, item number 1. So we will now move back to agenda item number 1, which is communication D819 2024 from the Department of Design and Construction requesting consideration of grant of sewer easement 3379 and public use in EVA. With us from the City Administration, we have Aaron Sakamoto, our Chief of Land Division from the Department of Design and Construction. Hi, Mr. Sakamoto. Great to see you again.
Good afternoon, Chair Cordero, Vice Chair Okimoto, council members. Aaron Sakamoto with the Department of Design and Construction. We have submitted dedication documents for the first 2 items, and we're asking for your acceptance and approval for these 2 dedication items. I'm available to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, thank you. And is this a whole drainage easement?
For the
EVA.
second item, item 2.
Item 1.
Item 1 is a sewer easement.
Oh, sewer easement, okay.
Yes. So
Is
it's a single sewer
Single
easement
sewer easement, okay.
in the
got it.
villages of Kapolei.
And is it to connect another easement, or like what's the purpose of it?
It's to tie the sewer system together, yes.
Okay, understood. Does anyone have any other questions on this? Okay, Councilmember Tupola.
Thank you very much for being here. Both of these are in my district. I don't have any comments about the Ko'olino one, but the village of Kapolei is pretty problematic. I will say that in the legislature, they're moving a bill for the city to acquire all the streets. I think right now the whole area is under HHFDC, is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, and so this has been years. That particular parcel 15 years ago was meant to be created and then handed over to the city and still hasn't been. I know that's not your kuleana, not your responsibility, but I have to say it publicly because I have so many issues where the city won't help and the state won't help. That's abandoned cars, that's anything, because it's kind of in ambiguous land. So I'm hoping that with more of these things that we're doing in there, that we can actually acquire it so that we can service the constituents in that area who really do deserve regular service just like everyone else in the community. So I think this is actually a good step forward so that we can take more responsibility and help out because HHFDC doesn't necessarily have any of these internal departments to do things like that. So for me, this is actually very advantageous for the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Fully understood. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, members. Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you. We'll now move on to testimony. We don't have any registered remote testifiers. Clerks, do we have any remote testifiers?
Chair, there are none.
Okay, we don't have any registered in-person testifiers, but clerks, do we have anyone else for in-person testifiers?
Chair, there are none.
Okay, seeing that we don't have any testifiers, we will now close testimony. We are back in discussion, members. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, we will now recommend, that the chair recommends that the document requesting approval and acceptance of the grant conveying easement for public use in EVA transmitted by communication D819-2024 be reported out for council approval. Any objections or reservations? Hearing none, so ordered. Moving forward to item number 2, we have communications D829-2024 from the Department of Design and Construction requesting consideration of deed conveying drain channel lot 19211, grant of drainage easement 10299, grant of sewer easement 1442 portion, and grant of sewer easement 9553 for public use in EVA. I thank you for staying up there, Mr. Sakamoto. So we have our Chief of Land Division for the Department of Design and Construction, Aaron Sakamoto.
Once again, yes. Once again, Aaron Sakamoto, Department of Design and Construction. Yeah, so this item does include a drainage channel, drainage easement, and 2 sewer easements. And I'm available to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Thank you. And I know that Councilmember Tupola already spoke to both items in the first agenda item. So, but does anyone have any questions or comments for Mr. Sakamoto? Okay, seeing none, we will now move on to testimony. We don't have any registered remote testifiers, but is there anyone else? Clerks, do we have anyone else online for testimony?
Chair, there are none.
Okay, seeing none, we will now move towards in-person testimony. We don't have any registered in-person testifiers, but is there anyone else in person who wishes to testify?
Chair, there are none.
Okay, members, we are back in discussion. Okay, seeing none, the chair recommends that the document requesting approval and acceptance of the grant conveying easement for public use in EVA transmitted by communication D829-2024 be reported out for council approval. Any objections or reservations? Hearing none, so ordered. Moving forward, item number 3, we have resolution 25-1, which is this resolution adopts the final Oahu Vision Zero Action Plan dated August 2024. I believe this was introduced by our committee member, Councilmember Dos Santos-Tam. So I would like to kick it over to Councilmember Dos Santos-Tam.
Thank you. As you mentioned, that this adopts the Oahu Vision Zero plan. This is part of the city's efforts to make sure there are no pedestrian deaths. And unfortunately, there are too many deaths on our roads. I think there's been 3 traffic fatalities so far this year, and that's 3 too many. And so to the extent that we can plan and come up with ways to make our roads safer for pedestrians, we absolutely should, and actually commend DTS for their work, not only on this plan, but also ways to implement the plan and look at other high injury corridors and other areas that are in need of improvement.
Thank you. Next, we would like to call from the City Administration, Director Designate, Director Morton.
Hello, Chair Cordero, Vice Chair Okimoto, members of the committee. Chair, it's nice to see you back in the transportation arena again. I have with me, and I want to acknowledge the staff we have from my department behind me. We have Renee Espial, our Complete Streets Administrator, Jermaine, Daniel, Tony, all passionate supporters of this Vision Zero plan. As Councilmember Dos Santos-Tam said, there's just far too many fatalities and serious injuries involving automobiles in our town. We have about one per week, and that's one per week too many. I totally agree with Councilmember Dos Santos-Tam. We also have somewhere in the order of 250 to 300 serious life-changing injuries that we have every year. And those numbers are sobering. This plan puts us in a, sort of helps us to prioritize what our safety efforts do. And they also help to provide a message to our partners at the federal government that we have a plan, that we are ripe for applying for federal dollars as a result of the plan. We wholly support the plan. I'm happy to answer any questions that any of the members have.
Thank you. Members, are there any questions for Director Morton? Okay, Councilmember Tupola.
Thank you so much. Aloha, Director, and thank you to Councilmember Dos Santos-Tam for his work on this. I think it's very necessary, and of course, Councilmember Tolba has been really leading the charge in EVA. My question was for the class 1, 2, 3. Is that something that similarly came up in other cities? And just for the public, could you explain that?
Jermaine, I don't think I got that question. It was a question of
class. Oh, sorry. Is this?
Are you on the right bill here? Are we on? I think we're on e-bikes for that one, right? Class 1, class 2, class 3.
Yeah. I'll hold that question for later. Thank you.
Okay, you got me confused.
Thank you.
Members, are there any other questions for 25-1? I do have a question because I know that you mentioned about federal funds, and we were just talking about the local hazard mitigation plan, and I was worried about any possible funds from FEMA or, hazard disaster federal funds being held up if we don't approve a plan. And I know this doesn't have to meet any deadlines or any restrictions or requirements, but it helps us achieve more federal grants and funds. Is that correct?
Yeah, as in the past, and we hope that the funding will continue, with the new administration. But in the past, there's been a large increase in the number of discretionary safety grant opportunities, and these come out pretty quick. They come, we may have 3 or 4 months notice to put a grant together. There's nothing that helps us become more competitive than saying, not only did we follow the grant instructions, but that we attach a comprehensive plan to our application. And that's what, it's not the main reason for this, but it certainly is an added rationale for why everybody should have a plan, because it does allow us to have a greater competitive edge.
Thank you. And, with the momentum that you and your department have been moving forward with federal grants, and regardless of, I guess, what happens in DC, programs are hopefully still going to be existing, right? And is there a way that we can continuously apply for, I don't know if they're called revolving grants or something that just are reoccurring grants?
Yeah, so those we call programmatic grants, and those are formula grants generally. And the way those work is, for the federal transit side, they're programmatic. From the federal highway side, there's an allocation set aside that we get from DOT. Now, if we go to Ed and we tell him that we have a great project and we want more than our minimum allocation, he's been very, very supportive of the county of getting more money. And then there are discretionary opportunities for both federal highways and for federal transit, for which the dollars are open to all municipalities in some cases, and we compete against every other city in America.
Thank you. And shifting to the actual plan, that doesn't preclude, I guess, reassessing different areas that have different arterial roadways that have then become a little more dangerous as well, right? Because when we were discussing this at the neighborhood board, the Salt Lake Alimanu neighborhood board, they were like, the plan already went out for comment, they missed the deadline, but they still want to be able to, I guess, alert DTS that certain areas were maybe not highlighted in the Vision Zero plan, but they wanted to be able to, I guess, hold it up to that level. And I guess, what is the process after that to do so?
Let me ask our project manager to come up and to answer that question. I think she's probably in a better position. So can I ask Jermaine to come up? Okay, Renee will take that question.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Renee Espio, Complete Streets Administrator. I think the heart of the question is sort of how often do we update? Obviously, we hope to make meaningful improvements on some of the corridors, and so the goal is that some of the corridors that we've identified as high injury locations in the future will no longer be high injury locations, and others that maybe were a lower tier could sort of rise up and therefore have their turn. I think we've talked about, we do sort of a 5-year update on a lot of plans at the city, right? Sustainable community plans, bike plans, there's sort of a goal generally for 5 years. And so I think that's something that, we would seek your guidance on and something we can talk about internally. This is our first time doing the plan. We do know it does take years to develop these projects and deliver them. So something, shorter than that probably doesn't make a lot of sense. You're sort of just rerunning the numbers and possibly coming out with the same outcomes. But we definitely think that this is a living document. As Jermaine mentioned to me, we do have a dashboard that will be set up online so that people can, sort of track those crashes over time. We will keep that current. And then at some point we can assess whether we want to sort of republish the outcomes, with the theory that it is a living document, it is a living plan, continues to guide our interventions, and hopefully the interventions that we have are super successful.
Thank you for sharing that, and I know that there's no definitive timeline for that, but I guess as we move along and we make those corridors safer, and this may make the plan a lot longer, but would it suffice to have pages that you add, you list the corridors that have been completed and been updated to complete street standards, and then I guess keep adding on to the plan afterwards too?
Yeah, so the plan actually is bigger than just this. There are appendices, there are a lot of technical sheets. We're actually still kind of finalizing some of those for specific locations. And so the data that's in there right now in the plan is 2015 to 2020. We're sort of getting to the point already where we realize we have some more recent data, and so we're working on analyzing that, not necessarily in the printed document, but on our website. So we'll continue to do that moving forward. And, if there are other things we want to see in the plan, we can add them. Roger was talking about federal programs that we become eligible for when we have plans like this. The Safe Streets and Roads for All federal grant, we just came, before council on Tuesday to ask for the local match for that. They do require an adopted safety action plan, of which this does qualify. And as part of the demonstration grant that we got, we actually do have to update this plan with our findings. So we consider this something of a living document. So there are things you want to put in here as we move forward. Please let us know. We do have the opportunity and now a little bit of funding to continue to update the plan.
Thank you. And I know that I hope that you're here for all that time for updates, for institutional knowledge, but I know I'm not going to be here in 5 years, so I won't be able to follow up like, hey, did we update this from 5 years ago or X, Y, and Z? So I just want to ensure that we have something on a timely I mean, that we're keeping our time, that we're keeping up with the timeliness of updating everything instead of like having to catch up and shove everything back into a plan, you know?
100%.
So,
Yeah,
thank
we are
you.
here. If I'm not here or Jermaine's not here, as a team, I think there's always going to be sort of an institutional commitment to safety. And now Vision Zero, with the possible adoption of the resolution, will be formalized as an important thing for city and county. So thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Members, any other questions? Councilmember Tupola.
I'll ask the right questions this time.
Okay.
Director Morton. I just have two quick questions. I really like this table or sheet that actually outlines specific geographical areas, and there's a small handful that are in my community, says how many crashes happen there. One of the concerns we had in Kapolei, which I'm not totally sure if this will address it, because I think I read that for each of these high crash identified areas, there will be a project designed to make it safer. I'm having trouble in areas where there is housing and then years, sometimes 3 to 4 years after, then the crosswalks come, then the stoplights come. Some of it is required by the developers, but some of it was city stoplights that we were waiting for, but there had already been a huge amount of housing that had already been put in. So is there something that's going to address that so that somehow that it cannot come so many years after?
It does take a lot longer than any of us like. A lot of the issues that we've run into in recent years have been, fulfilling the NEPA and the 106 requirements for environmental review and for cultural review of the historic preservation laws. We are trying to figure out a way that we can coordinate more closely with SHPD. They're open to it. Maybe we can come up with some programmatic agreements that would allow us to work faster than the current one, which is one at a time. We make requests, review this one at a time. We've discussed internally about whether or not we can adopt a programmatic agreement covering routine things that we do. And maybe that would definitely help us to speed up our internal process. It is a budget by line item project, so it's not going to be ever like 3 months from now for a traffic signal. It's always going to be a year or 2 or 3 years for a traffic signal from the time we do it. But we are taking steps to see if we can figure out some of the places where we can speed up the process.
Yeah, that'd be great. I like your suggestions. If the SHPD process can go in bulk instead of a la carte, one by one. But also, I think knowing that it's going to take 3 to 4 years, the one that you guys did for me in Kapolei with the prohibited left turns, I think we have to have those automatically installated prior to waiting the 3 years. There has to be interim steps. I'm only saying that because my district has so much new housing coming up. We have to have like a transition to step 1, then 2, and then 3 would finally be like the stoplights. Because I think those are the ones that we can do that are a little interim, but then we're not constantly trying to promise the community that something's coming along for them.
Yeah, I see Kelly Akasaki in the back there smiling because she's the one that would be receiving most of those requests. And she's Akamai, as you know, I mean, she's very fast, very responsive to every council member. So for those smaller ones like that, like the one you described, yes, those can be done faster than the heavy construction part that would be with a traffic signal. A traffic signal now is a $2.5–3 million installation. It has grown tremendously over the last few years over just the cost of a single installation.
And my last question is in regards to handicap access. So I have a handful of ones that people are asking, for us to put a ramp or something. And I have so much agricultural area in my district that there just really is no sidewalks. But in order for us to make that, we would have to make a sidewalk. We'd have to do all these other things. So somewhere in here, I did read that you guys will be getting together with disability community to kind of get their input on it. But I think that for me, I would want to know if any of the dangerous areas are because I have a lot of elderly people who really can't cross without a wheelchair. I have specific areas where I know the people who live there have wheelchairs and they kind of scoot across really fast because there's no stoplight. And the reason they're getting across is because the bus stop's there, but there's no real place except for right on the road for them to wait. So I know that's separate, but I do think that I didn't know if I saw specifically what was going to be done for like handicap access.
Yeah, for handicap access, it depends upon what it is. For curb cuts, you know, that those really can be programmed pretty quickly if there's a existing infrastructure there. Because we've been so responsive as a city that we've done many curb cuts. It's not DTS, it's DDC that usually puts those in, but they've been very responsive and they respond pretty quickly to individual requests as well. For bus stops, you know, we will go out and we do our ADA bus stop improvement program, and we do that annually. And we will insert a particular location from time to time. Generally, we plan those 2 years or 3 years out, but we, you know, it's not uncommon for us to put in an improvement in our existing plan. That's an ongoing program that we do every year. So feel free if there are specific locations. Now, sidewalks, you know, long stretches of sidewalks, that gets to be exceptionally expensive and that, but we, you know, we do have our sidewalk program. We have several in your neighborhood and several around the island that we're for the first time really in decades, as a city, we're looking at putting in sidewalks as safety improvements in certain areas, primarily priority areas in our pedestrian plan. Priority areas tend to be around schools. So we're not on those wide swaths of many areas where there are no sidewalks, but where there's bus routes, that would automatically be a priority, and where we can put in even just a landing, a bus stop landing, those are things, again, that we program a couple of years in advance. But please, you know, we're happy to work with the community to look at our list and make sure we're comprehensive in our plans.
No, thank you for your thorough answer. I'm going to forward this on to my community staff members because I think we have a lot of suggestions. And quick shout out to Kelly. She is awesome. She helped me at my town hall for traffic. We appreciate her very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, members. Any other questions? Council Chair Waters.
Thank you. No, I want to thank everyone involved who put this together because I think the goal is a very important one. Referring to your written testimony, the ultimate target of this work is 0 fatal or serious injury or crashes, which is exactly right. You know, it was very eye-opening, though, in your testimony. You said meeting this ambitious target will require significant investment, including $44 to $48 million annually, and up to $755 million over the course of the next 15 years. So I guess my question is, and you kind of answered this, a lot of this money comes from the federal government, but is there a plan on how to fund these very important projects?
Well, you're correct. If the local share for that would be about $9 million a year if we were successful in garnering federal dollars for most of it. And I don't know really. You know, the new administration hasn't moved in yet. We need to see what kind of programs, but you can be assured that as a department, we're going to continue to go after every safety dollar that we can get. And that's our hope, is that we would continue to be able to get some contribution from the federal government. Also contribution from the state. We've been very successful, not really successful, but we have instances where the state has provided us with money for specific projects, and so that all adds up to that amount. Plus, there's things that we do programmatically every year that add up to it. But I do agree with you; it's a big reach to look for that kind of money. In a certain sense, Vision Zero is aspirational. You know, we hope that we will be successful in reducing the carnage on the roads, but and even in the funding, I mean, it's, you know, I guess we could have put in a lower number, but we're reaching for the stars really to try to get these numbers and drive them down.
No, I think it's important to be aspirational because you have to set the goals high. And if we even come 50% of that, that's a big win. But it's not just aspirational. I'm looking at Exhibit A attached to the report, and you've identified a number of high injury corridors and high injury intersections, and they're across the island. And for us, we see it every day because it's in our districts, and it seems like common sense, but you actually have the data here to back it up. So that's really, really helpful. And to the extent that we can start knocking these out, as you mentioned earlier during Councilmember Tupola's questions, that it'd be great to have routine solutions for the same problems that's happening in similar intersections or corridors. But I do have to ask, and it's, you correct me if it's not germane, but I noticed that we got a new bike lane out front. That was somewhat of a surprise. I know it has been in the plans, but are we taking away the parking? Can I ask that question, Chair?
We're not taking away parking. We replaced the parking. It's just that we moved the bike lane inside. We did lose a lane,
Okay.
but we did not lose any parking. And we don't think our traffic analysis says we have sufficient capacity that it will not be. Now, it caught our staff a little bit by surprise too to see them. We've had, like you say, it's been planned for a few years now, and any apologies, I guess, because it did catch us a little bit off guard too.
Thank you. So it's going to be like later on down on King Street where there's a bike lane, but you're allowed to park, I guess, in the next lane over.
And it's striped. If you look on the lane here, it's striped for parking. It'll make more sense when we put the delineators in, and it'll be more evident to the motorists as to where the parking is. And it has created a couple of emergency things for our traffic engineering people to run out to make sure that we're doing things safely. So yes, thank you.
Thank you, Director. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. I personally like it because I will be able to cross quicker. I have short legs, so less lanes equals walking faster. Okay. Anyway, members, any other questions? Okay. Thank you, Director. We'll take testimony now. We do have registered. We have, for online testifiers, we have Donald Sakamoto.
Good afternoon, Chair Cordero, Vice Chair Okimoto, and the rest of the members of the council. For Donald Sakamoto, as a blind individual with the National Federation of the Blind, I have some concerns about our complete streets and the New Vision. I participated with the New Vision program. I was on the committee to give my input as a blind individual. Kudos for Renee SPL for helping us in Kaneohe to get a audible sound for crosswalks in Kaneohe for a blind individual, which is very important for us people who are blind. But the concern is roundabouts. If they plan to build more roundabouts, they should have some audible beacons. I think Larry Very, chair of 21 Neighborhood Board, did a resolution to have audible signals for the blind so they can cross safely in roundabouts. And I'm still waiting for Director Morton to get that pedestrian bridge at the Pro City Highlands. Very important. And I hope, Roger, you can do that very soon with design and construction and whatever else you have to do. But kudos for the Department of Transportation Services to have this vision program. I support it, and I hope it really helps the people with disabilities that represent Tupola and others. Thank you.
Thank you, members. Any questions for the testifier? Seeing none. Clerks, do we have any other testifiers online?
Chair, there are none.
Okay, seeing none, we'll now move on to in-person testifiers. Is there anyone in person who wishes to testify? Is there anyone in person who wishes to testify?
Chair, there are none.
Okay, seeing none, we are now back in discussion. Members, back in discussion? Okay, seeing none. Members, the chair recommends that Resolution 25-1 be reported out for adoption. Any discussion? Any objections? Any reservations? Hearing none, so ordered. Moving on to agenda item number 4, we have Bill 52, 2024, and this bill relates to electric bicycles. Members, we have posted to the agenda a proposed CD1 version of the bill submitted by Councilmember Santos-Tam. For your information, a summary of the amendments is listed on the agenda, and I will defer to Councilmember Santos-Tam if he wishes to explain his CD1.
Okay. And this is different than your hand-carried CD1, right? Is it the same?
I'll explain mine afterwards, but you can go ahead.
Let me pull mine up.
Oh, it's posted on the agenda. But for reference, while Councilmember Dos Santos-Tam is doing that, my CD1 will be a hand carry CD1, which was passed out at OCS 2025-00522/1/15/2025 at 10:33 a.m. And the CD1 is based off of the posted CD1 by Councilmember Dos Santos-Tam, and it takes the definition as it relates to one e-bike, electrical bikes, instead of relating it to electrical bikes and bicycles, and also changes the wattage, 750 watts, and removes that. Never mind, doesn't remove it. Okay, yeah, so it clarifies some of the languages, such as like making it into just a singular definition, which the bill refers to. I don't have to read it all, do I? Thank you. Okay, all right. But I'll toss it over to Councilmember Dos Santos-Tam for further explanation for what his amendments, which I based my amendments off of.
So thank you. And again, I appreciate your work on this as well in taking my version and further refining it. But again, the key elements here are we're a little stuck with the current state definition of electric bicycle. And so we've added a new proposed definition for motor, as in a bicycle equipped with a motor, so that it's compliant with the state's mandates, but we can still regulate bicycles equipped with motors, which are the same as these electrical bicycles, pretty much. It would prohibit the operation of bicycles equipped with motors exceeding 750 watts from being operated on any public street, highway, alley, path, or trail, which would effectively prohibit these very high-powered electric bicycles, which we are going to do anyway in the original version of the bill. And then it requires bicycles equipped with motors to be operated in a safe manner that is with the wheels facing forward, in contact with the ground, and operators seated, straddled on the seat. It prohibits an individual from operating a bicycle equipped with a motor in an unsafe manner. And it sort of talks about the kind of exhibition driving that we see, or exhibition riding that we see from a lot of these riders who are doing it unsafely. And it also mandates, again, that there be a helmet requirement. My version did bicycles and bicycles equipped with motors, but as you explained, we really can only do a helmet requirement for bicycles equipped with motors because the state law covers regular bicycles. Anyway, we're dealing with both how our laws, our ordinances fit in with the state laws, and I know the state legislature is going to be taking this up. So we may end up coming back probably this summer to deal with them, but for now, that's what I'm proposing.
Yes. Thank you. Members, not questions, sorry. Members, we will now move to the city administration. With us, we have either or both the DTS Director Designate, as well as from HPD, Major James Slater. Whomever.
Council members, Roger Morton for the record, again, Department of Transportation Services. Unfortunately, I have the OCS 2025-0019 version. I haven't seen the hand carry one today. I think I heard the gist of it, and certainly we're very supportive of the concept that we're in here. The main ones prohibiting unsafe driving, the other one being the helmet law. We discussed in our committee the issue of having a more stringent requirement for bicycles beyond the minimum requirement for that's contained in state law. And in our discussions, we determined and concluded that we had the right to have more stringent county regulations than state regulations. So I would defer to CORE for that interpretation, but that would be the gist of what I recall in our discussions with CORE. So it caught me a little surprised that we would be, carving that out of the bill. But I will say in large measure that we support the bill, and that's the main thing. We want our the major issues that we do see are the proliferation of the e-bikes and the need for better regulation of them. We look forward to the state providing more clarity. Hopefully this next session that they will provide more clarity in defining some of these new products that are offered on the that. But in support of the intent of both CDs.
Thank you very much. Next we have from HPD.
Sorry.
Good afternoon, Chair. Good afternoon, community members. I'm Lieutenant Blake Arita from Honolulu Police Department Traffic Division, testifying in place of Major Slater. He regrets that he couldn't be here, but he's happy with the progression of the bill. He's pleased that HPD's input was considered, and we support it as written. We didn't get the updated version, but helmets save lives, and that's something that we wanted to reiterate. And we do believe that the definition of the motor and everything is fit and with industry standards, what we're looking at. So we support it. I have any questions, can answer.
Thank you. Members, any questions for the city administration? All right, we have Councilmember Tupola.
Thank you, Chair. Aloha, sir. Thank you for being here. Respectfully on the CD1 Bill 52, which I'm not sure, maybe we'll get you a copy. I'm not sure if this was on the original one, but on there's a section A, so it says safe driving of bicycles equipped with motors on public streets, paths, or trails. So there's A, B, C. And so I wanted to ask to you on C and D, and I'm going to read it out loud, because I want to say that when I talked to Lieutenant Campbell, he said that it is existing inside the HRS what defines reckless driving and includes bicycles. So I just wanted to see if this was similar or whether or not we could refer to that part of the law, because there are no penalties attached in that particular section, but I wanted to know if we were making it more broad or more narrow based upon what you guys already use. So in C, it says, it is unlawful for an individual to operate a bicycle equipped with a motor in an unsafe manner, engage in exhibition driving on any public street, highway, alley, path, trail, etc., except for when riding in a parade, tournament, whatnot. This is actually in the next bill as well. And then D, it says an individual operating a bicycle equipped with a motor may not, and then it says stand, kneel, sit, perform, maneuver, engage. So those C and D is what I'm asking you about, whether or not this is more broad or more narrow, and whether or not we should refer to the HRS. What are your thoughts?
I prefer this version, just based on my experience. Prior to transferring to traffic division, I spent 15 years in Waikiki, and we had a lot of bicycle groups illegally riding throughout Waikiki, and this gives us more ammunition or things that we can focus on that are a little bit more pertinent to the problem that we're trying to address, which is hazardous e-bike riding. So I think the way it's written now in this bill helps HPD more versus using the HRS reckless driving, which could be applied to all vehicles, but this specifically for e-bikes would be better for us.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, members. Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, we will now move on to testimony. Let's see. We don't have any registered online testifiers. Is there anyone online who wishes to testify?
Chair, there are none.
Seeing none, we will now move forward to in-person testifiers. We don't have any registered in-person testifiers. Is there anyone else in person who wishes to testify?
Chair, Donald Sakamoto would like to testify.
Okay, Mr. Sakamoto.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Donald Sakamoto again. As a blind individual, I did participate in the November, I think, of last year when Director Martin had input about the electric bicycles. My concern was, as a blind individual, there should be like some kind of bell or noise on the bike, so us people who are blind, vision impaired, or even the kapuna and others know when they're coming around us, because they just spoke us. I brought this up at the Oahu Metropolitan Planning Organization as a member of the board. We had a presentation from the Bike League and talking about bicycles and electric bikes. And I surely believe that there should be some kind of noise on these bikes so we know when they're coming forward or behind or whatever. It's very dangerous. And I look forward to see if the Santos-Tam or yourself, Chair, can put that in the bill, because we had our white cane walk in October for the blind Ho'opono. Councilmember de Santos-Tam was there with staff. It was a blind awareness month, and I think this is very important that we should have safeguards for our vision impaired and blind people when we have these electric bikes roaming around in our city of Honolulu. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sakamoto. Is there anyone else, either online or in person, who wishes to testify?
Chair, there are none.
Okay, seeing none, we will now close testimony. We are now back in discussion. Back in discussion, members. Councilmember Dos Santos-Tam.
Well, thank you, Chair, again, for taking this, and I know transportation is something that's very near and dear to your heart. This bill has been months in the making, and in the time that we've been working on this, unfortunately, kids, adults, other riders continue to be hurt, particularly by riding these electric bicycles in an unsafe manner. And so, to the extent that the provisions in your draft of the bill are going to make things safer, if we can get these on the books now, if HPD can start to enforce now, it's going to make things a lot safer. The state legislature, for their part, I know that they're going to be working on it this session. If we have to come back later this summer and make further changes based on what the state does, or maybe the state just fully regulates it within their purview, that's also fine. But for me, this is about a real safety issue that's facing our kids and adults right now. And I'm really glad that we're going to be moving this forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Dos Santos-Tam. Members, are there any other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none. Members, the chair will recommend that I will amend the Bill 52-2024 to be amended to my hand-carried CD1. Once again, it is identified as OCS 2025-005 2/1/15/2025 10:33 a.m. Any discussion? Any objections or reservations? Hearing none, the bill has been amended to CD1. The chair then recommends that Bill 52-2024 CD1 be reported out for passage on third reading. Any discussion? Objections? Hearing none, so ordered. Moving forward, we are on agenda item number 5. Bill 61-2025, which relates to wheelies. This was introduced by myself as well as the Councilmember Wire. So I would like to allow Councilmember Wire, if you have any further discussions. I know we talked about other types of reckless driving and other reckless use of any other types of modes, but if you have any additional things you would like to share.
I mean, I think at the last hearing we did discuss in depth just the idea behind it. I appreciate the the input from the community and bringing this up. And I think there were recommendations I'm happy to discuss. I don't think there's any committee drafts right now, but open input from HPD. I know they had initial concerns about the penalty based on the ROH section that it's in. I think it would still be a violation instead of a petty misdemeanor. I know that was the concern but then open to discussion on that as well. So appreciate Chair agendizing it and, welcome input from you as well.
Thank you very much. Well, we can move on to the city administration, either to the DTS director designate, or we have Lieutenant Blake Arita from from Honolulu Police Department. Either one.
It's Roger Morton again from DTS. I'll go first. We can have HPD follow, but in general, we support this bill, but we have some concerns from a legal perspective that we're defining requirements for vehicles that are not legal on the street. And we'd urge the OCS and or CORE to take a look at that issue of regulating. This would include, by our reading, this would include bikes that are not registered. We can't register yet on the street pending state clarification. The same issue that we ran into with the original Bill 52, which was to do it. So we regulated vehicles at the 750 watt range in the last bill, but this would include some of the bills that we agree that need to be included, but they're regulating vehicles that are not legally allowed on the street in any case. And so our advice would be to have a discussion, legal discussion with either OCS or CORE to determine whether the city had the authority to regulate vehicles that are not allowed under state law.
Appreciate that. Does OCS, I'll defer to Chair, I apologize, Chair.
Councilmember Wire.
Thank you. Just for timeliness purposes, thank you, Director. Does OCS have an opinion on that at the moment, or would you want to? I'll defer. I don't want to put anyone on the spot, but initial gut reactions are even welcome. Okay, so I'm comfortable with OCS looking into that as well. I think, as mentioned at the last meeting, I think the intent was to provide for a broad application, similar to the fireworks discussion that we had, but welcome input. So from what I'm hearing from DTS Director is that you're saying that you perceive there to be legal constraints by trying to regulate or provide a broad definition, because that would be construed as not simply allowing the activity, but you're saying we're not even authorized because of preemption? Is that the argument?
I guess what I would say is that I think it requires a legal analysis to determine whether or not whether or not it could be certified as a law.
Okay, we'll leave it there.
Yeah.
Mahalo. Okay.
Thank you. Councilmember Tupola.
Thank you so much. So, Director, which ones are you referring to that are not allowed on the street?
The bill doesn't define it as narrowly as what, a class 1 or a class 2. Those aren't really defined either, but we do define a maximum wattage of 750 before we can, and anything above that, we won't license on the street. And so the bill, by our reading, would include both of those versions of within the standard and beyond the standard.
So you're referring to e-bikes then?
I'm referring to e-bikes. There are electric motorcycles. There are other vehicles too that could be included in that class. Mopeds are included in there too. Mopeds are legal. So no issues for me with mopeds, but it's for that gray area of vehicles that we're all waiting for definition and clarity from the state.
Understood. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Members, any other questions? Oh, Council Chair Waters, and then we'll go back to Councilmember Wire.
Thank you. And thank you to the introducers, because this comes up periodically in my neighborhood boards. And I see it myself driving home down Kalakaua Avenue, and kids, sometimes multiple bicycles, e-bikes, doing wheelies, cutting in and out of traffic. And it seems as though the bike riders aren't, they don't care about the safety of themselves, but how about the cars around them, right? They put the driver's in an awkward position. But it's been a long day. Did I hear you correctly that you're saying that it's difficult to make a law regarding wheelies when electric bikes are not even authorized to be on city streets? Did I get that correctly?
Well, the electric bikes are authorized to be on city streets if they meet the state definition. And the gray area is those vehicles that don't currently meet a state definition of a vehicle that's permitted on a street. For, you know, we've always had dirt bikes, but they've never really been allowed on the street. So it's the same, there's now a mixing of what's a mountain bike, what's a dirt bike, what's an e-bike, and some are legal and some are not defined. And so it's the vehicles that are not defined that give us, that don't really, I mean, I'm in favor of regulating all these vehicles, but I just urge a review of whether or not it would be, whether the state has preempted the county by not allowing these vehicles under state law.
Interesting. So
that's a legal question. It's not a DTS director question, really.
Yeah, but okay. But I think we need to work with you to try to figure that problem out. But also, like Councilmember Wire pointed out, when we're dealing with fireworks, the more straightforward and the cleaner it is, it'd be easier for HPD to actually enforce. Thank you.
Yeah, I think, you know, as was said earlier, HPD has a variety of laws that aren't necessarily specifically at e-bikes that, you know, for example, reckless driving could be construed no matter what type of vehicle. I think the commentary was that it would be easier for HPD to enforce the more that specific it becomes. But that doesn't, I don't think that precludes them from enforcing. I don't want to minimize the difficulty that they do have if they choose to enforce, because they're under many, you know, restrictions on the way that they do enforcement. But the question is a pretty narrow one. But I just think maybe we're off base. But I do think that it should be, perhaps before the next reading of the bill, it should be reviewed from that perspective.
Appreciate that. Actually, may I ask one more question? You know, noting in the bill that it doesn't actually have a penalty provision in the bill, but it's later on in the chapter. I do have a question for Lieutenant from HPD. And by the way, we really enjoy having you in Waikiki and hope you can stay there. But, you know, why can't we cite these guys for reckless driving? I think it was 291-2 HRS, reckless driving.
We can, excuse me, good afternoon again, Chair, Lieutenant Blake Arita. We can, but like I said, with these, if these laws provide a more narrow focus, it requires less articulation on our part. So, like, for example, if we outlaw wheelies on e-bikes, lifting a pedal up, you know, for expedition riding, we see that that's something we can automatically address. Whereas if they do that now, we would have to articulate why it's dangerous, why it's reckless. Is it causing danger to other drivers, to themselves? And it's a little bit more complicated. We can still do it. We have done it. But with these narrowing of the laws, it makes it easier for us to enforce where it's on site. It's something we can address. So just like when I was in Waikiki and we would have these large groups coming in, currently, because we wouldn't have like a wheelie law, we would cite for 291 Charlie-143, which is riding on bicycles. And that one states about having the rider shall not get off the seat. So if they're doing a wheelie and they're standing up, their butt is off the seat, that's something we would address and cite them, but not necessarily for the wheelie itself. But if we do have this wheelie type of law, that's something that upon site we can enforce. And of course we would have discretion. We wouldn't necessarily go and, you know, into somebody's cul-de-sac, and if it's like a little kid that doesn't know any better, we're not going to go and issue them a monetary citation. But if it's dangerous, if it's on Kalakaua Avenue, on Beretania, you know, in our busy roadways that's causing a danger, you know, that's something that we want to address. And the more laws that we have, it just makes it better for us to enforce.
No, that makes sense, and I can see how the burden of proof for reckless driving is probably higher than other traffic laws, but also the penalty for reckless driving is higher. Interestingly, Matt Wire was a prosecutor and I was a public defender. We actually used to do cases like this together. So begs the question, and because I forgot the answer to this, but can the police even cite bicycles who are on the street for even an unsafe lane change, right? Because that's what they're doing when they're going in between two vehicles doing a wheelie. Can you cite a bicycle doing that?
Because we consider bicycles vehicles, we can. Yeah, so it does happen, but yeah, it just depends on articulation and what we observe and everything like that.
I think I remember even a DUI on a bicycle, having one of those cases before. Yeah, but okay. No, thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councilmember Wire.
No, I was just gonna, no, appreciate that. Moho, sorry to come back to it. I wasn't sure Corporation Council was here. It has any insight on
You're calling
Director
on Corporation Council?
Yeah,
Okay.
if may. Okay. And I'll be quick, because Ian.
Good afternoon, everybody. Brian Anchetta, Deputy Corporation Counsel. With regard to Bill 61, I think there are some pending concerns on the Corps side. I guess one to throw out would be like the lack of definition of the term motorcycle within the bill. But there are some more nuanced concerns that we may have with regard to the overlaps with the statewide traffic code and the I guess the pending amendments that are being deliberated at this time. So I believe we can package up comments and provide you soon with like a memo, discussing our concerns.
Yeah, I guess the main question, just given that at the last, what was it, a couple months ago? When did we do it? December, I think. I don't remember, but I know that was the stated purpose that was laid out at the committee, right? Was to have it broad. And so that's why I'm assuming that there was advice given the director, or there's some kind of decision or input today.
Yeah, I think, I guess in the transition of this bill from full council to committee, I guess, there was a, second set of eyes, my eyes, for example, looking at it. So, I just need to package it up and deliver it to you.
So without getting into the specifics, and I'll wrap this up and we'll hand it over to Vice Chair to continue on. I'm hearing, so the main concern is you're saying that we might be, Director Morton mentioned preemption. Is that the barrier?
Yeah, that would be one of them. There's an attempt to define electric bicycles here, right? And I'll note that Bill 52 uses the term bicycles equipped with a motor. They don't actually go and hard set a definition of electric bicycles, and that can be problematic, especially if the state, basically, well, for example, Council Resolution 24-199, in which Council urged the state legislature to clarify the laws with regard to electric bicycles. Once that stuff comes down the pipe, there could be a very clear conflict between how the city defines it and how the state defines it. So there's a little bit of a speediness, I guess, to the current, City Bill 61 that we might want to, I guess, kind of pump the brakes and kind of wait to see how the state defines things.
I think that was the purpose, right? Was as we're waiting, giving HPD a tool.
Yes.
If that makes sense?
Yeah.
So you're saying pump the brakes to wait for the state to define, when we're saying the purpose of the tool is to fill the gap as we move towards, and understand the gaps that are in the state law.
Yeah. And so I would say kind of maybe I'm misunderstanding, but my suggestion would be to like slow down and see how the state, comes out with their legislation, and then proceed to, I guess, shape the city law accordingly.
Okay, but I mean, of course, if we're technically preempted, even if they introduce legislation, we can't overcome by adjusting to introduce legislation that hasn't been passed yet, right? So
well,
I'm trying to. I'm just trying to understand where we're going.
Yeah, I was mentioning. Well, yeah, there are exceptions that grants county powers to pretty much make adjustments to the statewide traffic code. It's I don't remember the exact statute number offhand, one of which gives the city power to adopt bicycle regulations, right? So that it doesn't specify electric bicycles, but it does discuss bicycles. The other thing is the counties have the power to adopt temporary or experimental regulations to address emergency or special conditions. So one of the things that can be helpful in that case is that, okay, if you provide the evidence, show that there's a clear emergency, wheelie-related incidents, just kind of trot those out, put those in the recitals. That can be helpful in being able to overcome an argument of preemption since it's articulated in the state law as an exception.
Okay.
But again, there are little, technical things that would be best, encapsulated within a memo too.
No, I agree with the memo part.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Thank you. We have Chair back. So I'll defer to you on how to proceed on the bill as well. Yeah, I'm open to discussing it. I'm open to moving it forward. So I'll defer to whatever Chair and the committee, I guess, thinks is the best course of action. I think that was the intent, and welcome the memo whenever it's ready. So appreciate that.
Okay. Do you want to say that the next step would be for adoption? So, yeah. Okay, Councilmember Tupola.
Real quick question, Corp Counsel. So is the penalty for this as written going to be the penalty for reckless driving, or would it be the fine as defined in the traffic code?
Okay, I don't know if I'm prepared to answer that question outright, but I believe the penalty is embedded within ROH and is not articulated within the bill. So whatever the chapter designates.
Well, inside ROH, it has unspecified penalties, and I think HPD knows this. They can do no less than 15, no more than 100 for people who violate the traffic code, which we're sticking it in there in the ROH in 15-20, 15-24 is where we're putting it. But then also in the state law, reckless driving is a misdemeanor with a fine up to $1,000. I just want to know which one would this apply?
I don't know offhand. I'd have to research that. Sorry.
Okay, no problem. And Chair, I have additional comments after this question period is done.
Okay, thank you. Members, any other questions? Okay, Councilmember Wire.
I mean, just clarify, Corporation Counsel, you mentioned that when it's not specified, then the chapter penalty would apply, right? Generally, not without asking for legal advice on this particular bill. Is that correct? Okay.
Yes.
So if there's a section in the applicable ROH that says like first offense this, second offense that, third offense this, that would be the applicable penalty.
Right. If it's being if this bill is being just added to the chapter and there are penalty provisions, default provisions later on down the line, those would apply.
Okay, appreciate that, Mahalo.
Thank you. And before I move on to Councilmember Santos-Tam, now that we have you here, and now that I'm back and you're here for us, would it be possible if we use the same language for defining what a e-bike or bike with a motor with it, like we had in Bill 52? Can that be applied for this Bill 61?
I think so. Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Councilmember Santos-Tam.
Thank you. That kind of gets to the point of my question, which we've spent probably about 15, 20 minutes discussing in sort of an esoteric way about like these sort of legal issues. And so just to clarify, my understanding of the problems that we face here is that the bill currently would prohibit a wheelie on a public street or roadway and defines a wheelie as a stunt on a moped or motorcycle. And the further definition of a moped includes an electric bicycle. And so this layering of definitions is what's super problematic.
Yeah, I would say that you probably shouldn't fit it with the standard statewide traffic code definition of moped.
And so in the same way that with Bill 52, we came up with a bicycle equipped with a motor, can we just not say, any motorized two-wheeled vehicle? It just seems to me that we all know what we want to do here. We all want to prevent these people from riding these two-wheel devices in an unsafe manner. Like, can't we just say, in very plain terms, if it's got two wheels, if it's got a motor, can't do this? All motorized vehicles, I don't know if they're motorized unicycles, but can't we just say anything with a motor must have at least two wheels on the ground at all times? I don't think the state regulates it. And if somebody rides a motorized unicycle, like, please call us and let us know. But like,
or like the scooters.
Isn't this the thing?
Yeah.
Do you have a response?
Yeah, that would require looking into the county powers again and the exceptions, like their ability to mess with the code. There is express allowance for regulation of bicycles, but then when you get into mopeds and motorcycles, it becomes a little grayer.
And then let me ask a question that is not asking for legal advice. This is a purely hypothetical exercise.
Okay.
If we were to pass a law that defines, makes a definition a certain way, and who would have standing to challenge that? Would the state come and slap us on the wrist? How would a judge go about doing this? Would somebody arrested for violating a law that contains such a definition come up to us and also slap us on the wrist? Like, how does this work? Because we keep talking about, oh, preempted this, oh, preempted that. What effect does this actually have?
Okay, I guess off the top of my head, if someone were to be, fined for a wheelie violation, if this bill were to pass, right? I guess one of the defenses that a lawyer could come up with is that this law is invalid on its face. It couldn't be implemented, and they would trot out the whole preemption issue and all of that stuff, and whether the city ever had any ability to enact such a law. So there's an enforceability issue.
Okay.
There.
And in Councilmember Tupola's questioning, it was revealed that a violation is $100, no more than $100.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, certainly I'm willing to take the risk that if we find someone $100, I don't think they would go find a lawyer and spend all this time in court fighting us. But who knows?
Thank you. I do want to ask the question again because I feel like that we can maybe get to a middle ground point here because the language that was accepted in Bill 52 and is legally standing is bicycles with a motor. Is that correct?
Yes.
And I know that we have here mopeds and motorcycles, and I know that a lot of the times what we sometimes think are e-bicycles are actually like motorcycles or whatever, motorbikes. So I guess if we change the definition of what is further layered onto it instead of e-bikes, I don't know if my co-introducer is open to matching the same definition of bike with a motor and the further layered part of the definition instead of what we have as electric bicycles, then changing it to what we have in what Bill 52 currently is.
Thank you. So the question was whether co-introducer would, to put simply, you're saying just replace it with Bill 52 definition.
Yeah, the definition of bicycle with a motor.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with that. I think it's two-part, right? Like one part is we're looking for a broad or maybe a more specified standard where it's observable, it's citable, right? And just easy to do. I think the goal with having the definition as broad as we had was contemplating the fact that because of the gaps that exist, there's challenges to enforcing. And so giving HPD a simple standard with an observable action that could be easily cited with the civil fraction would just be a tool in the toolkit while we're waiting for this ambiguous definition to get resolved. And I'm bringing that up because if we revert to 52, we're again, I think, operating within what exists, yeah? And so maybe not contemplating the newer stuff coming onto the market, but I'll leave it up to the experts that talked about it.
Good point. I mean, yeah, the newer stuff that exists, but I understand that, what happens after May or so, we may have to revisit these things again, these sections in the ROH again. So with that, I'll now move on to comments. Any further discussion? We have Councilmember Tupola.
Thanks so much, Chair. Just briefly, this is so minor, and so it can come in the next committee if it, when it comes back, but I made mention before that the definition of wheelie just has to say that a wheel is raised. This sounds dumb, but people in my district do the back wheel. So just throwing it out there that it can't just be the front wheel. So that's actually what a wheelie is.
No, that's perfect that you mentioned that. Okay, one moment. I am open to making that verbal amendment actually, so that we have that specific, where is it? Oh, okay, so look on the first page of the bill where it states that stunt performed by a person while riding on a moped or motorcycle in which a wheel is raised. So I will be recommending that further amendment, and I don't know. Oh, so sorry. Oh, okay. Okay, I will. Thank you. So I'll repeat this as there's further language that I have to. Okay, so where in addition to where a wheel is raised for a moment or longer on its other wheels, other wheel. Excuse me, wheel or wheels. Yes. Okay. All right. Got that. So I know we haven't fully decided or talked about whether or not we would take that, but I do want to go to testimony, and then we'll go back to discussion about the further possible amendments. We will now go to testimony. We don't have any registered in-person or, online testifiers, but is there anyone in person or online who wishes to testify?
Chair, there are none.
Okay, seeing none, we will now close testifiers. Members are back in discussion. I just threw out that definition because that was something that we were going back and forth on for Bill 52 when I was working on it last week, and up to when we were looking at it today as well. But that is because knowing that I want to work on amending this bill in committee before it does go out to the council, as opposed to having different definitions tacked on for consideration as floor drafts. And knowing that we just started the legislative session, that we most likely will have to come back to these sections. I am, of course, open to having those discussions as well. With that, any other discussions on the possible amendments that I've raised, whether it be the wheelies or taking Bill 52's definition of electric bicycle to then be bicycle with a motor. Does anyone have any questions? Or any additional comments? Councilmember Wire.
I would just say I fully support Councilmember Tupolo's amendment, and I'm fine postponing at this point if chair's open to it as the co-introducer to it, which I seem to hear being mentioned. And I know Mr. Ancheta said he'd get us a memo, and we can ask OCS to just evaluate it as well.
Okay, I was trying to make verbal amendments, but yeah, I don't mind doing that either.
I'll defer, but those are just my thoughts. Well,
Okay. Well, okay, so first off, I was going to just make verbal amendments to I don't know how to word this, but first off, we'll take off the wheelies, but so first off, the chair will recommend that the Bill 61/2024 will be amended to the following amendments, where section, I don't have the bill in front of me, where wheelies instead of front wheels will be a wheel, and then the last mention of wheels under that definition on its other wheel or wheels. And then for the definition under electric bicycle will then be, I need Bill 52. What it's stated in Bill 52 currently, no, not currently. Oh, no, that's not what it is. Oh, gosh. Bill 52, as used in the terms bicycle equipped with a motor, bicycles equipped with motors, yeah. I think that's what it is. Okay, sorry. One moment, please. Got it. Okay, will be bicycle equipped with a motor not exceeding 750 watts. So I will repeat what I said because I know I took it out of order. Once again, Bill 61, on the first page of the bill, under definitions for electric, we're going to be striking out electric bicycle as well as moped, because that has to both be removed. Then be put with bicycle equipped with a motor not exceeding 750 watts. And then for the wheelie definition, we will be stating that riding on a bicycle equipped with a motor not exceeding 750 watts, in which a wheel is raised so that the vehicle is balanced for a moment or longer on its other wheel or wheels. Okay, up for discussion, Councilmember Wire.
Just thinking about it, I do have concerns that it could maybe overcomplicate it, because it's leaving us in a position where folks are having to distinguish between the type of device, which is, I think, kind of one of the barriers right now, right? And so what I'm hearing from the description was we're taking out motorcycle, we're taking out moped, and then just applying a wheelie standard just to an e-bike as defined as something going up to 750 watts?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I feel like that limits the scope of what it applies to.
Okay,
So
all right, so you want deferral?
that would be my preference.
Okay, got it. Okay, with that, the chair recommends that Bill 61, 2024 be postponed to a date and time as determined by the chair. Next, moving forward, agenda item number 5, we have number 6, I mean. Relates to the use of malls. Members, we have posted on the agenda a proposed CD1 version of the bill submitted by Councilmember Dos Santos-Tam. For your information, the summary of the amendments is listed on the agenda, and if there's any further explanation, I would like to defer to Councilmember Dos Santos-Tam if he wishes to further describe his CD1.
Thank you, Chair. It's fairly simple, and it expands the definition of the malls that we transferred from just Fortune Mall and Union Mall to include all of the downtown malls. There are 7 of them total.
Thank you very much. Okay, we will now move on to the city administration. We have the director designate from DTS, as well as the deputy director from the Department of Parks and Recreation.
Aloha Council again, Roger Morton, Department of Transportation Services. We're in favor of the bill and the amendments to the bill to increase the number of malls to 7. Parks is here too to discuss it, but we would enter into a memorandum of agreement or understanding with Parks that they would continue to maintain, we would permit activities in the 7 downtown malls. We're in favor of the bill.
Okay, understood. Thank you. And I guess you discussed about the agreement. So does anyone have any questions about this agreement? No? Okay. Councilmember Dos Santos-Tam?
My only question is whether or to what extent you've talked with Parks Department and you'd be ready to implement a permitting process on day 1 after the mayor signs this, or we just want to get some expectations about the timeline.
The timeline would be quick. I don't know if it'd be the next day, but it would be certainly, we've talked it over internally at DTS and our permitting people, and we've talked over it with Parks. Parks would continue to provide the maintenance for the malls. That's really the heavier lift, is who would do the maintenance, and Parks would continue to maintain. So permitting, I don't want to. We hadn't really talked at a certain date, but if you pass it, it's immediately valid. I think the way the bill is written, probably take us a couple of months to work out an agreement with Parks and to do it. So that's what I would expect. But it'd be fairly quick.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, are there any other questions? Okay, seeing none, we will now move on to testimony. Is there anyone in person or online who wishes to testify?
Chair, there are none.
Okay, seeing none, we will now close testimony. We are now back in discussion, members. Okay, seeing none, the chair recommends that Bill 56, 2024 be amended to the posted CD1 OCS 2024-1075/12/18/2024 at 3:33 p.m. Any discussion? Objections or reservations? Hearing none, the bill has been amended to a CD1. The chair then recommends that Bill 56, 2024, CD1 be reported out for passage on third reading. Any discussion? Objections or reservations? Hearing none, so ordered. Members, because we did take up items 7 and 8 at the beginning of the meeting, we have no further business. This meeting is adjourned at 4:10 p.m.